Welcome back to the Quick Save Podcast. I'm Alex.
I'm Josh.
And today, we're talking about Burnout 3 Takedown.
Yeah, we're going to be entering our first game onto the backlog. And it's going to be Burnout 3 Takedown. Came out for the original Xbox and the PlayStation 2.
Came out in 2004, which makes it 18-year-old today.
You can drive a car legally for a couple of years.
That's right. We're not quite to the drinking age yet, or the smoking age now. It's got a ways to go yet, but, you know, for 18 years old, still think it holds up great.
What's the line? She drives like a Cadillac but handles like a bistro or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, we'll get into a little bit of overview if you've never played it before. Burnout 3 Takedown's obviously the third in a line of Burnout Racing series games. It's a racing game. Came out in 2004. Came out on, again, OG Xbox PS2. It features a mix of racing events, and there's like crash events. Crash events are returning from previous entries in the series.
The crash events are definitely more of like a puzzle base in the game. It's not a race and crash, though they do have that.
They're essentially going to give you a layout of a map. There's little pickups.
A road map, if you will.
Exactly. They're going to give you a road map. There's going to be little power-ups, boost, extra points, stuff like that. Essentially, you're going to crash your car strategically into usually some kind of overpass or intersection, and your goal is to cause as much destruction as possible, and that's kind of the theme of the game, is causing destruction while racing.
Some basic information on it. It's a two-player game or single-player campaign. You do have the ability to network this and play online. That's right, PS2 games with online capabilities.
The good old days.
An interesting part about that, though, is that on the box itself, it says that it's up to 6 players online, but the game says 8. So, not sure what they're trying to go for.
Buyer beware.
Buyer beware.
Freaking EA Games lying to us since the good old days.
EA lie? Never.
But yeah, so essentially the main thing you need to know if you've never played a Burnout game before is it's different than your Need for Speeds, it's different than your Forzas and what have you.
Your Midnight Clubs.
What sets Burnout apart is you're encouraged to wreck your opponents, and that really started in 3. It's called Takedown. You can perform these takedowns on your opponents. Usually you slam into them on the sides, backs of their car, kind of sends them spiraling out of control. They crash, and in return, you're rewarded with a bigger boost meter. It fills your boost meter by doing these takedowns. So literally, you are rewarded for slamming into other cars, which I think is what every child who has ever played a NASCAR game has wanted.
I think we've all had that internal monologue to ourselves going, what happens if I just floor it and crash straight into that oil tanker? Well, tell me what happens.
Great news. This will give you everything you want and more. So you get started in the game. It's got a slapping soundtrack. This is around the time of all the EA sports games. They have what was called EA Tracks, I believe is what it was called. There's it's trademarked and everything, man. They weren't EA Games Tracks, TRAX. All the sports games had this, but essentially it was a program they started to get licensed songs into their video games. Instead of having to have a composer who made all your video games, you could just get popular songs from the time and play those. And I mean, there's 44 tracks, which I feel
44 tracks.
I feel like that's a lot for a PS2 game.
The crazy thing to me is that it's 44 licensed tracks, so we're obviously getting some decent music. But we're getting great music in this. We got, MCR in this. We got Jimmy Eat World, The Explosion,
a Fallout Boy, Franz Ferdinand, Yellow Card, Finger 11, a bunch of huge bands, especially for the time.
And the cool thing is that this soundtrack shared a lot of similarities with 2 other games. It was Tony Hawk's Underground 2 and the Cars game. The Disney one.
Like the Disney Cars.
Yeah, Disney Cars.
That's so
had a lot of similar music. I haven't had the chance to play Cars yet. Maybe we'll look into it one day.
I did play it as a child. I don't remember any MCR or Fallout Boy. I remember the game is pretty fun, though. But yeah, so I mean, it has this, literally immediately you start up the game, it's got this amazing soundtrack kind of playing. There's an opening cutscene. They play...
starts off with Lazy Generation.
Lazy Generation, exactly.
Great song.
It is a great song. But as you get into it, essentially you're in the campaign anyways. They have essentially 3 areas. You've got the USA, Europe, and the Far East. Ooh, dated the game a little bit there. calling it the Far East.
Maybe we need to put a masking tape on the TV there to just label it the Middle East.
Yeah, just no thanks.
Just trying to make it a little bit better on us.
We're gonna leave. Just call it the East. I think is fine. With Far East, I feel like no bueno. But so. There are different types of events. So you'll start in the U.S. They give you a bunch of events there. Each event is they have a location. There's a handful of maps throughout the game. So I think one is we played in Silver Lake.
Yep, Silver Lake.
Which is kind of like a lakeside mountain.
It reminded me a lot of like the Utah countryside.
Yeah, absolutely has that kind of like rural feel.
Maybe even like Idaho. I
don't remember a lot of the other names, but usually there's like a mountain kind of wilderness level, and then there's like a city level. And that's kind of, they kind of mix between those.
The three I remember the most is like the Lakeside Mountain.
Yep.
And then you had Downtown. And
then which was with the pillars.
Yep. You had Bayside, which is near the marina.
Yes, and that was, Oceanside. Yep, absolutely. And so I think we didn't really get to like Europe or anything, but I know there's a mountain, like a snowy mountain level on Europe. Yep. The Far East was a bunch of like city driving. But yeah, kind of just the city versus the wilderness, so you're kind of two areas mainly. But there are multiple kinds of events. It's not just race and that's it, which I have games like, even modern games like that. I have Hot Wheels Unleashed, fun game, but pretty much it's like race, period. That's like the game. There's no more to it than racing, which is,
I'm a big like racing game fan. Mm-hmm. Most of my games that I do play are racing games. Mm-hmm. This definitely brought a new element that I wasn't used to. I'm very much a sim racer at heart. Which I feel like there are some areas in the game that we kind of trade spots on. Like I did better in one area and you did better in the other.
Yep.
Because I feel like you're probably a bit more of an arcade racer.
Yes, absolutely correct.
Which no difference between the two of us. It's just what we like.
Yep. But so these events you can perform. The standard one they're going to be is just a race. Boom, 3 laps around the track, and again you are rewarded for taking down your opponents. So you're going to race around. Usually, I think there's 6 places. Usually, there's 6 racers.
Places,
yeah, 6 racers in a race. And so, you're encouraged to take down your opponents. There's traffic. There's oncoming traffic. You can't just drive around and do whatever you want. You have to avoid traffic on top of people hitting. You can hit your opponents. They can hit you back.
A big quote that we saw while researching the game was from the director, Alex Ward, and he said it's a game that's more meant to be racing through traffic than...
No, he said fighting through traffic.
Fighting through traffic than racing through traffic. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, the traffic is a huge part. It's really a huge element because it becomes like... You'll come around like a blind corner or something, and some dude will just be there, and he'll just slam into him.
Not only that, but you can use the traffic as weapons against your opponents and cause them to crash.
Yep, you can slam a guy into a car, and then we don't think about the real life capabilities like this.
Yeah, it's just a game. Just a game, guys.
You just ruined like multiple people's lives. Some guy's car is totaled on the freeway, but so you get a standard race, usually 3 laps.
It tends to vary depending on the race. We've seen as low as 2 and then as high as 6.
So yeah, some events have more laps, absolutely. So race, just your standard race around a couple of laps. There's a burning lap, which is essentially you have a single lap to go as fast as you can. They'll usually lock you to 1 car. Each burning lap is based around 1 car.
It's usually like probably one of the faster cars in the game too. I've noticed.
We did a bunch of super fast events. Yeah, absolutely. And then there was some events that were just like drive a normal car as fast as you can. So I think they kind of go back and forth between those two. There's one of my favorites, the Road Rage event, which is a timed event where the goal is not to race. You're still on that lap, one of those maps, but your goal is to defeat. Essentially, they give you 5 minutes and the clock is ticking down. And then every time you take down one of your opponents, they add like 30 seconds on the clock or 15 seconds on the clock.
It's almost like one of those tournament style fighting games in that sense.
Yeah, it's like it's like survival. You just have to like go as long as you can. And so essentially,
the more points you get, the better on the leaderboards you are.
Yeah, you want to take down your opponents, more opponents. I love Road Rage because it is like you don't have to race. It's like your racing capabilities don't matter. It's literally just hit your opponents as much as you can, which is super fun. Then we mentioned the crash events, where it's that strategic puzzle. They kind of lay out a bunch of cars driving by. You have to crash in as strategically as possible, get as many points as possible.
So basically, as you're going down, because it's essentially you're going downhill for the most part on a lot of these, there's a ramp at the end, and then there's power-ups throughout that first area, and then after that ramp. And as soon as you leap off that ramp, your gas is cut.
Yep.
You're just flying through the air, and you're trying to use their...
This is like an aftertouch system.
Yeah, aftertouch system.
They have like you hold. I believe it's on. We played on PS2. R1 slows down and gives you like impact bullet time, and then what you do is you use that to like move your car in the right way, and then you like blow up your car to do more damage.
Yeah, there's a afterburn effect essentially. I can't quite remember what they called it, but essentially you hit a vehicle, and then after a certain amount of damage, you have the option to blow up your car, which is super interesting because if you place your car right when you're doing the aftertouch, you can go and just cause even more damage. Obviously, the more you do initially, after you get some of those power-ups, you can earn more money, more rewards, and then the more money you earn in these crash events, the better vehicles you can get. I know there's a couple of fun ones in there. There's like a fire truck and a metro bus that you can use. They start you off with what they call a heavy-duty pickup, which honestly looks like a Subaru Outback. Going on from crash events, though, we have head-to-heads, which are sprint races against a single opponent, which is basically your boss. Your defeat the boss moment. We finished the Coupe series, and the Coupe boss, or I'm sorry, not the Coupe, the Compact series. The Compact boss, I think, destroyed us.
This is the Dominator,
yeah,
right?
the Dominator, yep.
Yeah, he was nuts. He's like his car is like he's got flames on the side. That's how you know he's serious. All the other ones just look like standard racing cars.
Yep.
But this one, he's got flames on the side, so you know he's serious.
This guy was going to like the street races out back, and so he's got some mods. It's not stickers.
It's the Tokyo Drift. They put
Drift.
They put the Vin Diesel at the end, and you're like, holy crap, this guy means business.
And then we also went up against the Prototype, which is the last last compact car to unlock for that series.
Yeah. So to get these like Prototype cars, you have to get a gold in every other event in that series. So we got a gold in every compact event, which even just being the first series, still pretty tough. I mean, there were definitely some races where we were, throwing ourselves at it multiple times.
Overall, I think just to do one of the three series, you have those three series are Compact, Muscle, and Coupe.
And those are just the early ones.
Yeah, this is just literally level 1 beginning of the game to go through it.
Yeah.
It took us probably close to 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
just to do one series.
Unlock like 8 cars for one series. You mentioned head-to-head, right?
We were just talking about that. That's Dominator guy with the flames.
Yep, and then Eliminator. We spent probably the most time on this Eliminator race. So Eliminator race, essentially, there are 6 racers. There's 5 laps in this race. And every time you do a lap, whoever's in last place, their car just gets detonated, like some kind of jigsaw, like murder game.
Yep. Hence the elimination of the player.
Exactly.
Eliminator.
Yeah, called Eliminator. So you need to stay essentially in front, or at least as close to the front as you can. So that way, when it's down to you and one other person, you can get ahead. Boom. So every lap, essentially, you're just competing to not be last until eventually you win. Which we probably did like 5 to 10 times.
Yeah.
It's rough. It is really rough.
And like one crash can just set you back completely, and it could cost you the entire race. So you could be 4 laps in, trying to get onto that last 5th lap, hit a single car, lose the entire race, and it can be super frustrating like that. But I remember quite vividly both of us cheering when we did complete.
Yeah,
those.
it was. We were both. In some ways you're like, yay, I beat it. In other ways you're like, yay, I never have to do that again. But essentially, so what do you get? All right, so you beat these levels, you beat these races, events. What do you get? So they give you medals, bronze, silver, gold. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward. Of like a race, if you get 3rd in a race, you get a bronze. 2nd is silver. 1st is gold.
Basic standard, podium.
Yeah,
stuff.
Burning lap is they give you like a target time to beat. Okay, you got to beat this
time attack stuff.
Yep. Road rage, they give you a number of cars to destroy. So they'll say like, if you destroy 5 cars, that's bronze medal. 7 is a silver. 10's a gold. Something like that. The other ones are pretty straightforward too. Head to head, just beat your opponent. Eliminator coming first. Crash events, they give you like a dollar amount total, which is like kind of rough. They don't really tell you until like the very end how much certain cars are worth.
I think it's the bigger the car, the more it's worth.
Essentially, yeah. There's like usually they'll have like a little stack of buses or something hidden in the back, and that's what you want to kind of aim for because the buses are worth a ton of points, stuff like that, right? So essentially, the more damage you do, the better you do. Get higher medals, and one of these medals they get you new cars. Every time you beat a race or something like that, they'll say, "Hey, this is your 5th gold medal. After 3 more, you'll unlock a new car." Or they'll say there's like a point system.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like this leaderboard point system that they award you when you meet certain milestones.
Yeah, so let's say you're racing and you're driving on the oncoming traffic. Okay, you earn points for each like second you're driving on oncoming traffic. So these points add up at the end of the race. They calculate all your points, and they say, okay, you earned 75,000 points this race. At 250,000 points, you unlock a new car. And so essentially one of the main ways you're unlocking cars is these milestones, beating crash events. There's specific like crash vehicles you get for earning enough crash money when you're blowing stuff up. I think you can get like a fire truck and like a semi cab, and these like the longer you play, you're rewarded with these sweet new vehicles.
Oh, there was the off-road vehicle, which honestly just looked like a quad wheel limo sort of thing. So I mean, we had stated before that we do better in certain aspects than one another, which I think really helped us complete that series. And especially if we were to go for like a complete playthrough, I think having 2 of us that do better in one area than the other makes the game much easier.
Yeah, it was great to like get frustrated at an event and I could just hand it to you and then you would try it a couple times. Nice kind of back and forth.
Well, going into those events, like what was your least favorite event?
I can't stand burning laps. Time attack stuff I always find so frustrating because it's literally just like throw yourself at it over and over and over until you get it done. And I just I'm not a patient person, so having to like do the same thing 15 times until you do it just correctly, I really did not like that.
And see, me as a sim racer, I live for that stuff. I want to drill my times as low as they can get.
And the issue with some of the burning laps, they give you like special events. All the special events are like burning laps. They give you this car, and again, it's a PS2, right? They give you this car, and the car drives so fast. The motion blur is next level. It is tough to see what is going on around you. It is sweet to drive these fast cars. They become impossible to control.
Definitely.
And then these tight corners and stuff. One wrong turn, like you had mentioned, one crash will set you back.
You almost,
have to start the whole thing
you almost
over.
Get that bit of road hypnotism.
Exactly.
Because you're focusing so far ahead.
Yep.
With everything else passing you kind of forget that you're trying to move and dodge things.
Yep.
My
how about
least
you?
favorite
How was your least favorite?
Was definitely Road Rage. It just, for someone that isn't but someone that doesn't do a lot of arcade racing, that the idea of like having to quickly nudge and do things that I normally am not used to in racing games really made that a difficult event for me.
Yeah, normally you want to be just driving a straight line, like you said, taking those corners, drifting around. But then now this event is literally like, who cares about the racing? Hit these guys till they die.
And so it was a part of me was like, hey, don't worry about going fast. And the other part of me was like, hey, at least try to stay ahead of everyone.
And that's what's so funny is because I do not like burning laps. You're like, I love burning laps. You're like, I do not like Road Rage. Literally, probably my favorite event in the game is Road Rage.
So, it's a good game to have a buddy to play with, especially like you don't want the 2 of you to be playing separate games and stuff. You want to hang out and stuff. This is the game to bring out, in my opinion, when you have people over and everyone wants to play a fun game.
Yeah.
Granted, it's, only up to 2-player,
mm-hmm.
But you pass that controller, back in the good old days, that's what we did. We passed the controller. It wasn't, hey, you go home and hop on.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game that truly was meant for something like that.
Yeah, it is really, you don't need a lot of experience with racers or anything like that. I would
say you need 0 experience with racers to be good at this game.
It's pretty straightforward. They kind of, give you the tips and tricks you need. You don't need to go fast around. There are definitely times I'm holding the brake to slow down. Absolutely. It felt pretty straightforward. If I was brand new to racers and video games, you could walk in, play this, and walk out after a couple hours and be like, yeah, I can play racing games now. But what are some of your pros? What are some things that you really liked, stood out to you about this game?
Big ones for me were how good it looked. Like, graphics aren't the most important thing, but man, you load this game up, you're like, PS2 era graphics, we're gonna get some blocky, we're gonna have some missing frames. Like, it's not gonna be great, but it'll be good, it'll be sufficient. You load this up, it's great. I was amazed when I loaded this game up.
For 2004, it looks amazing. We were talking about the was it Criterion, right?
Yeah, Criterion Games.
Yeah, they made it in their renderware engine,
which is their proprietary engine that they only used.
Yeah, there's sometimes it feels like there's a lot of bloom, but it looks pretty. Cars are vibrant, environments stand out, headlights are bright. It's fun to look at. It is pretty.
It makes me almost feel like Burnout Paradise, the 5th edition to the series?
Yeah, so it would have been 5 because, so there's
Revenge came after
3 and then Revenge and then Paradise, yeah.
So, to me, it feels like Paradise got a lot of its, like, colors and its vibrance that made it feel alive from Burnout 3. Because I've had a good amount of time just cruising around in Paradise as well. And I felt at home in this game, even though this is my first time playing Burnout 3.
Yeah, so 3 is considered an extremely influential game, not just for the series, but I think kind of racers in general.
Yeah, overall.
There is a lot to be owed to Burnout 3, and it's kind of essentially its style where they're like, it's just about racing, right? They're like take your opponents out and win the race, and it's kind of racer, because if you play the old Burnout games, they're just kind of like, race your car. It's a time trial. It feels this kind of like weird, sterile, clean environment, and it has a lot of that sim aspect. And then you get to like Burnout 3 is like, dude, get your car and let's freaking rock and roll, man. This is gonna be awesome.
On a lot of like the reviews, they talk about that. They talk about how in the first couple of Burnout games, like, you saw this progression pattern where Burnout 1 was this mix of, hey, go fast and try to crash your opponents or get them behind you, but it wasn't, intense.
Yeah,
Burnout 2 was a little bit more.
It was primarily just racing because, like I said, the takedowns came out in 3.
Yep.
So 1 and 2 was just like racing, just kind of standard racing, and they had 2 had the crash events.
Yep.
That we mentioned that got added, and it wasn't until 3, and especially Revenge, where they had this element where it's like, and especially with these road rage events, racing matters less and less. Knocking your opponents off the road matters more and more.
It goes more from a racing game to almost a fighting game.
And there obviously been some, inspired by Split Second racing game where it's literally like there's through the lap there's obstacles you can trigger to like knock out your opponents.
The other one I also think of in a weird way is Stuntman.
Mm-hmm.
Like this idea of like, you're trying to jump at the right angle and cause this big scene to, go for a crash.
Yeah.
And that reminds me a ton of the crash events.
And there, the other one I was thinking of was Flat Out too, which is like, it gamifies this racing even more, where we say, Burnout says, okay, racing matters, and in some events racing doesn't matter, and Flat Out 2 says like, racing doesn't matter, throw your car at a dartboard.
Yeah, Flat Out 2 is honestly a mini game with cars instead of, you as a character.
Yep. Go bowling with your like muscle car or whatever,
yep.
Right? Stuff like that. But something that I really liked was that the takedowns, there's like a kill cam. So if I knock a car off the road, there's this sweet kind of like, you get this like out of body experience where the camera zooms out from your car, zooms into their car, it's like flipping, they've crashed into a wall, they get sent into like the skybox of the video. Like they're literally hitting like invisible walls.
Yeah.
These cars flip over and stuff. And then it's so weird. You're driving, knock someone off the road, pull your camera angle, show you their car getting flipped into the sun, and then they send you back to your car, but they kind of like auto drive your car when the camera pulls away. It's so bizarre.
It's like a slight correction as like you're panned away from yourself.
Yeah, so it's like if you're driving straight at a wall and you knock somebody out, they kind of like fix your car. So instead of crashing straight into a wall straight ahead, they kind of like fix it and turn your car a little bit. And I think they do some like course correction when they pull you out of there when you get taken.
I also think like if there was like a vehicle in front of you or something, they remove that so that way you're not.
There's definitely so there's
that.
definitely spawning stuff. The road rage events are super like that, where so you'll race and there's gonna be 3 guys and they're gonna be like kill these 3 guys and you kill them. They spawn pretty instantly. As soon as you kill one, it feels like they come back in every like 10-15 seconds. They show up pretty consistently.
So hot take here. Which a lot of people really don't like this, but I think for this game at times, it's amazing because of the way they programmed it, and that's the rubber banding effect that they have.
Yeah, so we talked about crashing can be pretty feast or famine sometimes. Yep. You'll be in first place, you'll crash, you'll be in fourth place.
It depends a lot on the event too, because I feel like eliminator rounds and burning laps. If you crash, you're being set way back.
Yep.
But on things like
a standard race or
road rage, and what's the other one I'm thinking of?
There was the head-to-head.
Yeah, or not the head-to-head.
Eliminator race, burning lap.
But on a couple of them, it matters more about being close to your opponents and them being close to you. So even if you get too far ahead, they're catching right up. Because the crashing, the takedowns, it's in the title.
Yep.
They want the game to be about that.
And that's what I found so nice is like even if you crash and some dudes get in front of you, at the end of the day you're still having a fun time trying to run them off the road, right? I did mention this a little bit earlier, but yeah, the motion blur. I know you said it looks amazing. There are definitely times where it looks not so good, but I think the motion blur helps to kind of hide that.
There's
the bloom and the motion blur.
There's a certain speed in the game that you hit. I think on ours it was like granted this is an Imperial, is about like after 160 miles an hour it gets pretty tough.
Yeah, the things blur out a lot, which is like maybe fine in some ways, but like I mentioned in those harder events where it's like tighter corners, you're in all these obstacles are in the way, traffic's in the way. You're driving that fast, it can be hard to dodge, to move out of the way. The motion blur
the problem with when you start really going that fast is you're taking those corners, and normally you get about 3 seconds ahead time where you can see the car coming in front of you. You hit over 160, that car just snaps into life and appears in front of you, whether you want it to or not.
Yep. The other thing we mentioned, so what's one thing you didn't really like?
One thing that I wasn't too much of a fan of is on events like head-to-heads and eliminators, events that were meant to be challenging become almost impossible at times, mainly due to the fact that your opponent has like this crazy weight advantage all of a sudden, or at random times like traffic will turn in front of you and just try to crash you itself.
Yeah, so the cars try and get out of the way, but sometimes them getting out of the way, I think the AI gets kind of confused.
Yeah.
And it'll turn in front of you. Yeah, definitely when you do like the head-to-heads and stuff. So each car has its own kind of hidden stats. They don't really say this.
Yeah, they give you a speed stat and a weight stat, and that's all we get.
That's all you get, but there are certain cars that have better acceleration. There are certain cars that have a higher top speed. And it's one of those things when it'll say like weight 2, speed 3. They don't really give an idea of what that means, but you feel it. The moment you start a race and you're in like a slow car, they have this class called the Assassin. Okay, so these Assassin cars do not have great acceleration, but they hit hard. That's the whole bit is like, so for a road rage event, it would be perfect because it's all about hitting cars. But if you're trying to do a race with an assassin car, not even close. And again, they don't really say that. So like to know the difference between what a compact prototype was versus a tuned compact, you wouldn't be able to know without playing.
It's a lot of trial and error.
Yes.
It was literally take these cars into a race, see how they feel, and then make notes of this does well in this type of event, this does well in that type of event.
Yeah.
Like, I had a ton of luck using the Assassin class, like RPG here, Assassin class. But the Assassin cars in Eliminators were amazing because they had a good top-end speed, and it wasn't about being quick. It was about maintaining speed, having a good weight to knock people out of your way.
Taking the opponents out and keeping them behind you. Yep.
And same thing with the head-to-heads. You know, it was really good to have that type of car where you can just keep maintaining a speed, take a good amount of damage in as well, and not be crashing all the time because of it. Yeah,
because there's an element when you get hit, your weight affects this, right? If you get hit, if you're in a super light car, you're going to get tossed around like a salad on Tuesday. You're driving a quick, speedy car with no weight. Somebody touches you, you're going to shoot left or right, whichever way they're hitting you. It is tough. I think you had mentioned that there's a lot of times in these fast cars, it feels almost floaty at times driving.
Yeah.
And so you're riding the wall, especially when we were learning. We were like riding corners pretty hard. You're just essentially grinding on the wall around the corner.
When we first started, I definitely noticed that the car almost felt at times like it was lifting from the ground. Mm-hmm. And, you know, granted, it's a PS2 game. There's a lot of limitations back then.
Yeah.
It's also not, you know, to say that, like, after a while of playing, we kind of got used to that. We learned where it, like, has that floating feeling and when to start turning. And it preemptively became something that we became more and more accustomed to.
Yeah, there was definitely times where both of us, I'd hit a drift and you'd be like, whoa, that was sweet. Or you'd hit a drift and I'd be like, man, that looks so good. The game makes you feel like Spider-Man, to quote all the Spider-Man reviews on PS4. The game is good. It's fast. It makes you feel badass. Once you play a few hours, you get into it, you'll come around, you'll drift around some corner and just zoom out, and you're like, this is the greatest feeling ever.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the drifting aspect is that they pan out a bit, so you can really see yourself going. And, you know, I can only imagine, you know, me going back 2004, you know, I was like, I don't know, 10? Mm-hmm. As a kid, I would have been like, I am the coolest kid on the entire block. No one can step to me.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Something I really did not like, we mentioned this a little bit, the hitboxes are super weird on some stuff. So there's a level in downtown where there's like a train, like a subway train track above you. So they have these pillars. One section of the map has just maybe like 12 pillars down this straight line. So essentially, you need to be in the middle of these pillars, or you can go to the left or right. Left or right's going to have some traffic. There's some intersections, so you need to kind of dodge traffic while you're going between all these pillars. The pillars felt like instant kill. Like, it felt like if you touched a pillar, you crashed instantly.
Yeah, there were also corners, I remember being like that, where, like, you know, there'd be like a fence post, and you would think, I have a good, you know, in-game, like, 3 feet from touching that, I don't need to worry.
Yeah.
And then you'd hit something that wasn't there.
Yeah, you clip something, a little bit of invisible wall, some hitboxes. You'd hit something, and they'd smash your car. Or there were times, I think there was a time where I think a guy hit our car, but we couldn't really see it. And so it just looked like nothing made us crash.
Yeah.
It's like
there's a lot of times where I remember going, what happened?
Exactly, yeah. It's definitely not always the clearest about what is happening. But, I mean, it kind of works both ways. There were definitely times where we'd slam straight into a wall going like 150 miles an hour, and they just kind of let you keep driving. Like, it was fine. It was super
I think it
weird.
goes back a lot to that, is this going to be a challenging event, or is this an event for everyone?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, because there were certain maps, certain levels where it definitely felt like it was a more challenging map. There were more of these obstacles that felt like if you touched them, it crashed your car.
Yeah, cars that just won't move, things like that. And it sounds like we're really dogging on the game, but I mean, you gotta be as faithful to our experience as possible.
And at the end of the day, I mean, it is still a fun, amazing game.
I would go back and play it still.
Absolutely. It's just one of those things where some of those levels, you're like, oh, this is bull. Mainly because you crashed 9 times at the same place, right?
You know, it's that idea that I think they still have that racing mentality of go back, you know, you're going to fail, go back, relearn the track.
Absolutely.
Go from looking ahead in the track to having muscle memory connections to where you are.
Yep.
But the problem with, you know, early games like that did that is it can be really disheartening when you keep losing.
And welcome back to Crash FM. I'm DJ Stryker. No, but for real though, we did have a audio crash. Something happened. We were in a.
We got transported to Nintendo's Animal Crossing really fast.
Exactly. We went on a whole mystical journey, but because this is not a visual medium, you won't get to see it. But anyways, Burnout 3. like we were talking, please forgive us if we backtrack over something we've already said here, but we were talking about how frustrating events can be when you lose over and over, have this kind of like old school gaming.
Yep.
And it definitely feels like that. We had that event. There was a head-to-head race, and what we had to keep doing was it was a one-on-one against this dude, and he just smoked us like 3 times in a row, and it's like an entire 5-minute race.
Those head-to-heads, you really end up facing what they consider to be the dominator or the best car for that.
Yeah, it was like
section.
the prototype, I think. Yeah, so it's
the prototype is like the ultimate car, but like the dominator is like just below that.
Yep. So the prototypes and the head-to-heads are really tough to beat. So I mean, we did it probably 3 or 4 times, and it's just a race. At the end of the day, it's not, it was not tough terrain. There was not the crazy pillars that downtown has.
Even the traffic was minimal.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was just that he was such an aggressive racer, and it was really you crash once, very feast or famine, like we mentioned. You crash once, that's the event, But yeah, let's move on to something that we both really enjoyed.
Flame paint jobs on the side of cars?
Yes, but I was talking about DJ Stryker, our lovely host of Crash FM. So throughout the game, I think we mentioned it a little bit when it starts here. This gentleman, Mr. DJ Stryker, breaks off a piece of it. He is a real, he's a real DJ.
I'm trying to pull this up silently. It's not working.
Forgive
Forgive us here.
I think he's a real DJ from LA, I believe. But he is the DJ of the in-game kind of Crash FM radio station, which is kind of serves as your tutorial and teaches you how to do things. Stryker was a hoot. He has funny little stories.
I thought for sure he was going to be the most annoying thing ever. I enjoyed every single comment he
He's
made.
got this kind of like suaveness. It's like campy in a fun way. He's like, hey, I need 9 burners down here on the South Side Coast for another road rage event. Who wants to join us and get some rays? And say stuff like that. And it's
we got some quotes pulled up here. We've got the cars, we've got the locations, and I'm bringing the music. I'm Stryker on Crash FM.
Yeah, he says, I'm crashing out on all things that are supposedly rock. I'm Stryker. Stand by.
Where's some other fun ones? The crash junctions are open for business. How much damage can we create?
Remember the rules of Crash? The clue's in the name somewhere. ... Yeah, but he's a hoot. There was one, I don't think we have the quote, but he talks about bikinis.
Yeah, he talked about a bikini somewhere.
He was talking about bikinis and how he was the one in the bikini.
Another fun one is one-on-one, mano-y-mano. This is a racing bar fight, which... Talk about a great way to describe the game.
Can you keep scrolling? There was some about... He references... I think it's under, like, meta. He references... SSX and stuff.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, so...
If you're driving around the Riviera, you might get to see some familiar faces walking down the sidewalks. Apparently, this is where the SSX guys spend their summer vacations. So for once, I get to control the music. They listen to DJ Atomica. Eat this, homeboy.
Yeah, he says, can you believe this? DJ Atomica has just called me and asked me for us to turn the volume down. Forget it, homeboy. It ain't gonna happen. Let's rock. DJ Atomica is the...
SSX DJ
he's the
for
SSX.
their radio.
Exactly. He's the DJ for their radio.
What's up? I'm Stryker. I want to say hello to all the producers out there of the game. Y'all suck. Oh my god, great meta comment.
Yeah, exactly. He's throwing the shade. He pulls no punches, and it's a fun little addition. Instead of them just being like, "Here's how you play the game. Do this, do that." You have this kind of like cool dude, like in-world dude, being like, "Here's what you got to do."
I kind of miss that about games sometimes. The like weird meta-ness that you could find when you really dug deep. Because I think we only heard one of these like once in our time playing.
Yeah, there are not a ton of like we definitely started to hear some repeating ones as we're doing events and stuff. But no, it is a nice little touch. Like I said, it's nice to have this kind of in-world dude being your tutorial instead of them just like holding your hand through it, and instead of saying like, "Oh, here's how to accelerate and here's how to do this," they have some cool dude hitting you up.
In the last point I want to make on Stryker himself is that there were only rare occasions where I felt that he was too much. And I really noticed it on those hard moments. Those I've played this for 5 times in a row now, and I'm tired of hearing Stryker say, X thing about
some
something.
witty bit, right? Yeah, for sure. It wasn't too bad. In any, let's say you're doing like a normal race, he'd maybe pop up. He pops up at the beginning, pops up at the end, and I think maybe once or twice in the middle as the songs change over, he'll kind of interject some stuff. But it never felt overbearing.
The one weird thing I remember the most is that like he would bump in like the middle of a song.
Yeah,
like I'd be jamming and all of a sudden he just pops in. I'm like, what the heck, dude?
Yeah, I think it's potentially. I think some of that was like timed around like where you're at in the race. So if you get to like the last quarter of the race, they might play a little Stryker thing. It's just kind of your, without knowing it, kind of your clue into like, oh, I'm closing in on the end, right? And he would say something like, oh, it looks like we've got 2 burners closing into the end. He'll say some witty whatever about it too. So, but then we did take some time. I know we talked about the graphics and the speed, how it kind of blends everything together. We did slow down a little bit, analyze our surroundings, because there are some interesting billboards.
Yeah, we went around some burning lap tracks where we see the most of them.
Yeah, so we would slowly drive around the levels in burning laps. Do you remember all of them? There was a Need for Speed Underground 2.
Yep, there was one of those. There was 2 different Axe billboards.
Yeah, there was one with a cannon. There was one with like a lady. She was like
a lady's face. I think it was even just that.
Yeah, it was just her face, and it said Axe on it. There was a Tiger Woods 2005, made by EA
PGA
Sports.
Tour.
Yeah, made by EA, obviously.
Battlefield Modern Warfare.
Yup, I remember that too. But yeah, it's just these weird little things. There was one for Game Studio as well.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't remember. It was not
Maximilla or something like that.
It was something, yeah. It was a studio that we had not heard of for sure, but I'm sure they had some part in working on the
Surprisingly enough, I thought for sure we would see like an EA Games billboard.
There's not an EA Games billboard, which is kind of interesting. They have, the games are on the billboards, but nothing was just like EA, which definitely seems like it would be, right?
I feel like I've played plenty of EA games that involve just like streets. And, like, I at least see one board that's just EA.
Yeah, but I thought those were kind of a nice touch. I don't know, I feel like stuff like that can kind of go, like, missed pretty easily. So it's nice to have little touches like that as you're driving through. And speaking of these billboards, let's talk about the Need for Speed Underground 2 demo, huh? Because there's a demo for Underground 2. Because Underground 2 came out not long after.
Yeah, like, literally, I think it was, like, 4 or 5 months after Burnout 3 came out.
We both played Underground 2.
I played many hours as a kid on Underground.
I would consider, and I feel like maybe you would feel the same way, feels in some ways pretty unrecognizable from the final product.
If you were to give me that when I had never played Underground 2, if you gave me that demo, let me play it, and then gave me the actual game of Underground 2, I would say I see where these are similar, but these are 2 separate games. I mean, like, granted, I know you can't put everything into a demo, but I feel like there was just so much taken away that it just left it bare bones.
It feels pretty bare bones. It is a huge map. They give you a handful of things. There's some cars racing around that you can go, battle in head-to-head races. They give you 4 shops. There's like a car shop, a paint shop, stuff like that. But I mean, when you go there, they kind of play like a little cutscene of like, here's what the cool cars you could build can look like, but they don't let you build a car. I think that would have been really nice to let you just build a car. And
give us like 4 or 5 options.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a ton. But then it was timed, right? You could only play the demo for like 20 minutes or, 15 minutes or whatever.
And then they did the most just unfeasible thing for you gotta put yourself back in 2003, 2004. They hard boot you back into the beginning of the game. So you have to go through all the launch trailers, all that.
You'd have to mash the start button a billion times to get through back to the menus.
And I mean, like that, you think about it, it's like, oh, that takes you a minute and a half. Not even that. That's like exaggerated. It takes you like 30 seconds, minute at most.
But with the load screens and stuff, it can be a little tough.
It feels tremendously long.
Yeah, it's pretty rough for sure.
Like, I get what they were trying to do. They don't want you to just sit there on the demo forever and not play Burnout 3. But come on,
the worst part about the whole demo was the camera felt like it was on like a boat. So you would turn to the right, and the camera would float to the it would kind of like tilt to the left. So it was kind of like, imagine it's on a gimbal, like rotating left and right. So as you turn, it's kind of like rocking back and forth as you're turning left and right. Very like nauseating camera angles.
Welcome to the demo of Need for Speed Underground 2. It's Wave Racer.
Yeah, it was not enjoyable to look at. That's for sure. It made my brain feel not.
I remember us playing and saying, it almost feels a little like motion sickness.
It was not good.
And I think of Underground 2, I think, that camera like snaps into place. It's not like ease into it. It snaps.
I wonder if this demo must have been kind of an earlier product. Because again, like we said, the game came out like a month later, right? So this must have been some kind of earlier demo. There's no way that a month before that it was still this rough. But yeah, the demo, I would pass. Maybe, go in, play it once to like...
enjoy the nostalgia of it.
Yeah, be like, man, this is way different than the game. Don't play it. Don't keep playing it, man. Just go play the real game if that's what you want. It was rough.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't give you the taste for what Need for Speed Underground truly was. I want to talk a little bit about price here because we have some price options. And also, it depends a great deal on what system you have. I believe the cheapest one was on the Xbox Platinum. Mm. And, we're going by current prices on pricecharting.com for just some reference. And that was right around $10.50, which for a game, this old is pretty good value in my opinion. It's held its own.
I mean, especially for, again, like an amazing game, $10 feels fair. Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like this is the game that, like, it's kind of like, it doesn't, definitely doesn't belong in the dollar bin.
Yeah.
But it's not as, quote unquote rare or just so sought after that it's now $50.
Yeah.
$10 I feel is like the sweet spot for this.
Yep.
Now, we played not on the Xbox, we played on the PS2. And the PS2 copy, that's where it gets spendy. Black Label.
$15.50, baby.
$15.50. I mean, like...
You want that PlayStation Glory Black Label? Extra $5, cough it up.
Like, I get it. PS2, way more easy to access than an Xbox. Back then,
smaller
and even
on
nowadays,
average, too.
Yep. It was kind of like, you got to think DVDs were, the big hot ticket item. Mm-hmm. DVD player back in the day was like $200. Go buy yourself a PS2, give your kids something to, play on, and you have your own DVD player. So they were in like every household basically.
Yep.
And, I get that it was the more accessible one to go for, but because everyone has a PS2 now, the price is starting to go up a bit on that.
Yep.
Now, obviously, Red Label Greatest Hits version is a bit cheaper. I think it was right around the $12 to $13 mark. But like still, I mean, I feel like if you have an Xbox, get the Platinum one, pay the $10. The game was great. I loved it. Mm-hmm. Is it $15 great though? I mean, if that's your only way to play it, yes. But other than that, if you have, like I said, the Xbox version, I say go pick that copy up instead.
If this was like a $35 game, I'd be like, walk away, But I mean, $10 to $15. I'd buy it for that, absolutely.
As a collector, I'm like, gotta get all the different types of copies. But as a consumer, maybe someone that doesn't collect games, I feel like the cheaper option should be the best option for them.
Yeah, pretty much. If you're like, hey, I want to play this, and you got some consoles sitting around, I think just on the whole, we'll have to do an episode about like how to game on a budget. Xbox on the whole, decently cheaper than PlayStation 2 copies. I think there's a lot of things where that is true. I mean, there's plenty of Silent Hills and stuff like that where, I mean, just the PlayStation copies, everybody had PlayStations when they were kids, drives the price way up because that's what people want.
That's what people want. It's what people have access to. People, I still know people that are trying to find Xboxes nowadays.
Oh yeah, they're not always easy to find. But yeah, if you have an Xbox sitting around, absolutely worth a pickup.
And then just to finish off here for our episode, it's sad that we're coming to an end, but
hey, look, just like a race, there's a beginning and an end.
The end is when you hit the wall really hard and crash.
And then Stryker says something really funny like, "Oh, looks like you crashed into the wall." And you're like, "Dude, Stryker, you shut up, man. I'm working on it."
Excuse me while I reload this race again while I try to get a gold medal on it.
Exactly. Yep. But yeah, we're going to put a cap on this episode. Burnout 3 was amazing. One of my favorites. The whole Burnout series I've always loved, even some of the older ones that don't have these crash events and don't focus on the takedowns and stuff. Super solid, high quality racing. It's fun.
Second favorite arcade racer for me.
There you go. What's number one?
We'll have to do that another episode.
Oh my gosh.
The suspense.
The mystery.
Don't worry, that won't be coming up.
All right. Well, like always, we'll probably put some links down in the description. Information we think is kind of necessary. We'll probably link some old reviews, stuff like that.
Some where to buys.
Exactly, stuff like that. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. That's going to be it for this episode. Keep an eye out next week for more.
I'm Alex.
I'm Josh.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.